In this video, we will demonstrate the Gloo Platform Portal API usage and analytics feature. This diagram shows a high-level overview of this feature of our platform. When a user or system accesses an API using an API key, our API Gateway, which is an Envoy proxy in our case, validates the API key and checks whether the user or system is authorized to access the API. During that validation, we retrieve additional metadata for that API key. For example, the usage plan that is attached to that API key. We store that information in the access log of our API gateway. And using an OpenTelemetry pipeline, we fetch the information from that access log and we process that in our OTel pipeline to later be stored in one of the supported data stores. So in this example, we're using ClickHouse as the data store for the API access log. So that contains the request, but also whether the request was valid, whether we got a correct response or an error, the API product access, the specific API access, the usage plan, the API key, and so forth. From ClickHouse, we can then use that as a data source for a Grafana dashboard, which allows us to create a view and to show a dashboard of the API usage for the products and the API products deployed on the portal. Here we see the Grafana API dashboard, and in this dashboard we can select the product for which we want to view the information. We can select the usage plan. We can also select the request URL, so the actual path within the API product that we're interested in, the HTTP method, the status code of that request and response, and the user ID for which we want to see the information. So when we select a specific API product, we can see that the information that we retrieve is the information for that specific product. We can check the request latency of the request to that API product. We can see the status code over time, as well as things like the top API consumers for this specific API. So let's switch this back to all API products. Another very useful feature is that we can select the API usage per user ID. In this dashboard, we can show up to 100 user IDs here, which match the user ID of the top API consumers. But if you want to look up a specific user and their API usage, you can simply use that filter and type in the username or part of the username, and then we can filter on that specific user. And then for that user, we can see things as the total API calls that they made, the status code over time of the requests and responses, the request latency, and so forth. Besides the overall API product usage and analytics dashboard, we also provide out-of-the-box dashboards per API product. So if you're only interested in the information of a specific API product, or if you want to give users access to only the information of a given API product, those dashboards are readily available for you to use. Finally, we want to point out that because we use an OpenTelemetry pipeline, we are able to export our data to any data store supported by OpenTelemetry. And this means that the information that we use in our API product users and analytics dashboard can also be exported to other environments for further processing. And this opens the way to implement use cases for things like API usage, monetization, analytics, and so forth.